Joe Rogan had on a guest recently, and they were talking about any number of hard-hitting political issues. And as they were discussing the hard-hitting political issues, Joe wanted to come out and, just describe how Joe Biden is a dementia-riddled mess. He doesn't know what he's saying. He's losing his sanity. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And how there was this moment where Joe Biden was talking about America's Revolutionary War and just said the silliest thing. That I can't believe anyone would vote for someone after saying such a silly thing. Then Jamie, who is somebody who, helps manage the show. When I say manage the show, as in they cut between camera angles, they bring stuff on screen, transitions, stuff like that, deal with technical errors, that type of manage the show, not like a boardroom manager. They went to look this up to try to find the clip that they were talking about because, presenting a clip during the podcast helps viewers understand. And he was able to find out that the way Joe Rogan had presented it left a lot of information out about what exactly Joe Biden said and who he was referencing. Anyway, let's watch this clip because I think it's quite beautiful to see the tonal shift once they find out who said what.
Well, there's people that voted for Biden that are doing it now. They're like, what did I do?
Right.
Like, what did I choose? Like, how is this guy?
Yeah, you just can't listen to an interview or he's saying some of the stuff he says that just makes no sense at all. It's like,
okay, can I just throw out there quickly, if Trump supporters can disregard many of the ridiculous and crazy things Trump says based upon that's just Trump joking around, why am I supposed to take major concerns not with policy differences with Biden, not with, hey, here is what he got wrong on this issue, or here's what he could have done better when it came to the withdrawal in Afghanistan, but based upon him stumbling on his words when I still have no solid evidence that his mental capacity and his ability to make decisions as president of the United States has been impacted. Like, at the end of the day, when it comes to John Fetterman, I don't care if John Fetterman fumbles on his words after a stroke. As long as his mental capacity is all there, he can still make decisions, then he can still be a senator, he can still, complete his job. My disagreements with John Fetterman is going to come from him seemingly abandoning the progressive movement, or at the very least a progressive label, and with recent statements he's put out about the war between Israel and Hamas. But when it comes to his language, my main problem is not going to be with the fact that he dresses kind of slobby, he wears hoodies and shorts all the time. It's not going to be that he speaks with stumbling on his words. It's ultimately going to be the policy stuff. All of this is kind of window dressing until we have legitimate evidence that Joe Biden can't make decisions as a decision maker. We were starting to get decent evidence of that, for example, of Dianne Feinstein towards the end of her time in office and towards the end of her life. We were starting to get genuine evidence of that from colleagues directly knowing Dianne, being more worried, from seeing her, not really even understanding what was being discussed in questions during meetings and not being able to follow. A lot more than stumbling on words. And I'm not saying Biden cannot reach that state. He's an old man after all. And when people get old, you're much more likely to reach that type of a state. But by God, there's so much more substantive critiques you can make about Biden besides, he fumbles on his words a lot. If that's the case, then, I could point towards many cases for the other elderly man running for president of the United States, likely to be the nominee for president, Donald Trump, who's fumbled on his words quite a lot recently. Anyway, continuing. I will say, though, being presentable as president of the United States is important. But when it comes to Trump v. Biden, I don't think Trump really wins the presentability contest.
it's like you can't listen to those interviews and feel like you made a good decision. I don't know how you
Did you hear what he said like yesterday or a couple days ago?
Mm-mm.
He's talking about the Revolutionary War. He's like, one of the reasons why we lost the Revolutionary War, one of the problems with the Revolutionary War was they didn't have enough airports.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I saw that. It's like, what the hell?
Like, pull him.
Now, notice something. Joe Rogan brings it up, says that Joe Biden said that during the Revolutionary War, the reason the British lost was because they didn't have enough airports. And then the other guy says, oh, I heard that too. You can hear it under his breath. Listen.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
I saw
I saw that. Just keep that in mind. So Joe Rogan is bringing it up, so he saw it, and there's other guys saying that he saw it too, just for good memory.
Have
like,
you seen
what
that?
the
Like, pull him.
It's
Imagine
crazy.
If you had any other job and you were talking like that,
Yeah.
they would go, "Hey, you're done."
A few moments.
Okay, so look, just saying, you're saying about this that it's almost like disqualifying. Like if there's any other job in the world, we would have kicked them out immediately after saying some crazy stuff like that.
Later.
The same stable genius that said the biggest problem we had in the Revolutionary War is we didn't have enough airports. Whoa.
Yeah, that's it.
Whoa.
What?
Just for the record,
Is that fake?
it's not fake.
Burns
But
is
he was
a
referencing
immoral,
Trump
morally
saying that.
corrupt, bankrupt man.
Here's what Trump saying it in 2019.
Oh.
Donald Trump said something about that. He didn't say Jesus. He said a stable genius, and that's where the transcription.
Let me hear what it says. What did he say?
In June of 1775, the Continental Congress created a unified army out of the revolutionary forces encamped around Boston and New York, and named after the great George Washington, Commander-in-Chief. The Continental Army suffered a bitter winter of Valley Forge, found glory across the waters of the Delaware, and seized victory from Cornwallis of Yorktown. Our army manned the airport. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So he fucked up.
Yeah, he did. But I feel like
Took over
that's
the airport.
you can tell too. It sounds like a little different. He's like, you could tell he like messed up his words, but
Yeah.
He was just, I don't know.
Took over the airports.
Well, that's
It
the
is
thing
funny.
about
But it's-
media these days. It's like
Right.
you
never
got to
know.
look into it.
Oh man, oh well, you can tell when it comes to Trump, you know, he just kind of, for Trump, he was just kind of like messing up his words. He was just, you know, he just kind of fumbling around, you know, because, you know, obviously he didn't actually mean airports there. No, I'm obvious. It's different now that it's Trump because he's Trump. I mean, come on. It's disqualifying when Biden says it, but it's not disqualifying when Trump says it. And when Trump says it, it's just an oopsie doopsie. Oh my goodness, I can't believe that. Ooh, oh well, how funny. Oh, better gotta Google things next time. Look, I respect the show for having Jamie correct them live. I respect the show for doing that because that means that the person who heard them put out that misinformation were immediately corrected. Jamie could have very easily just ignored his boss making this mistake and just gone on, and it probably would have only been found out to be a lie by like maybe 1 to 2 to 3% of the people who listened to the podcast bothered to go look it up, and then while looking it up, didn't find the altered version, but found the original thing that was being referenced by Biden, Donald Trump saying it. So they could have vaguely gotten away with it. So I do appreciate them going out of their way to correct it. But then once it was corrected, and when the tables were shifted, just the speed of moving away to the next topic, and the speed at which the guest in question was like, well, fumbling on the words. I mean, come on. It's a little too on the nose, isn't it? Feels a little too on the nose. I just want to bring this up, not particularly to pick on Joe Rogan for falling for some misinformation. Joe Rogan has fallen for misinformation before. There's a decent chance he'll fall for it again. Hopefully he improves. We all try to get better. I'm trying to be as kind here as possible. Well, the main reason I'm bringing this up isn't to complain about misinformation or disinformation again. It's a massive issue on social media. It's not hard to imagine Joe Rogan and this guy, if him saying he saw it is true, saw some clip on Twitter, saw some clip on Instagram, saw some clip on TikTok of Joe Biden referencing it, and just took it at face value. Okay, it's not hard to figure that out. I think context added and features like that help with stuff like that, but this is a multifaceted problem, and that's not the main thing I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is the second part of this video, when they found out it's misinformation, and then their reaction. The double standard Donald Trump can say that he wants to suspend the U.S. Constitution. Donald Trump can say that he wants to directly bomb the families of terrorists and target families, a war crime. He can publicly say we should ban Muslims from entering the United States until we find out what the hell is going on, which Rudy Giuliani would reaffirm was his original intention of the Muslim ban on Fox and Friends. He can come out and say this bizarro world shit about airports during the Revolutionary War. But by the way, I do want to say, if I was a Trump supporter, my argument would be this: hey, just putting out there, if we did win the airports, would have been helpful. If we did have airports at the time, would have helped. You know, that's smart Trump forward thinking. If he was there during the Revolutionary War, he would have suggested airports for planes. Anyway, Trump has said a bunch of crazy stuff like this in the past, whether it was we shouldn't support the Kurds because the Kurds weren't with us on D-Day, or whether it was him mixing up the Baltics and the Balkans when he was in the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and was talking to them about, oh, it really sucks about that civil war. Civil war? Yeah, that civil war you guys had about 30 years ago. He was talking about the Yugoslav civil wars. Or when he was talking to the president of the Kurdish regional government in Iraq, and he forgot his name, so he just started calling him Mr. Kurd. I can find a lot of gaffes from Donald Trump. It's just that Donald Trump has cultivated an image as a TV show personality, and from his time in politics as such a rabble-rouser and troublemaker. The standard for him is so unbelievably low. You hear from Democrats and often complain about the different standard Democrats and Republicans are held to when it comes to stuff like this, but putting that partisan bias aside, Donald Trump has set the standard for himself so very low with his crazy comments, with him talking about overthrowing the government and Ron DeSantis being a pedophile and all sorts of nonsense, that when they hear Donald Trump saying something similar, it's immediately like, well, you know, that's Donald Trump. It's Trump being Trump. But when Biden says it, it's insane. Why? Because if Biden was to say the type of stuff Donald Trump says, if he was to do it for 1 or 2 days, his approval rating would be cut in half and he'd leave the White House by the end of the month. Because his image is not the same image that Donald Trump has cultivated, which where he acts like that, it's crazy. It's bizarro world. If tomorrow we found out that one of the Kardashians snatched the wig of another Kardashian, called him a stanky bitch and like beat him up, right? Obviously, none of us would probably lower our opinion of the Kardashians because our opinion of the Kardashians were already set there. If Joe Biden did that tomorrow, then obviously we would all vote for him more energetically and his approval rating would go up. You guys see what I'm saying? That the standard for Trump has been set so unbelievably low is that when he meets minor scandals, it's no scandals at all, even though it would be potentially career ending for other politicians. And when he has major scandals, it almost feels like it's this minor scandal because he's just so constantly scandal ridden. It's almost like part of his personality. And not to mention to his supporters, anytime that he does run into a scandal, it becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy of his persecution. Or any single time that he's being brought to account or being held accountable, it's not evidence of him being engaged in criminal behavior or him lowering the standards or him breaking the law. It's just evidence of him being persecuted. It's a brilliant image that he's cultivated that keeps his supporters diehard while the critique ineffective.